Well, welcome everybody to the Greatest Horseman podcast, and I am here with Michael Lyons today, and we're just going to have a conversation about horses and life. And thank you so much, Michael, for
And I
joining
appreciate
me
it.
and doing this with me.
Absolutely.
We're here at the ATFO here in
Yeah.
West Virginia. We're out here to support the Heart of Phoenix Equine Rescue. So we had the privilege of judging their show this weekend, and it's been a blast.
Yeah.
This is just my second year doing it, but you've been doing this for a very, very long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about kind of getting started and getting plugged
Yeah.
in with them and what that's been like.
Well, I think it happens, like all great things we do. My wife told me to do it. Uh, but no, so she had seen, I don't know if it was something Tania wrote or she had told me about this rescue out of West Virginia. And I was like, fine, I'm happy. I always like supporting rescues. I think they do amazing things. Um, but she was like, well, this one's a little different. This one's a little uh, different kind of built rescue. And I was like, okay, so we got into that, got to know Tania a little bit. And then she asked us if we'd judge. And that happened. And so what she did is she kind of brought us into it and was like, well, this is what I'm thinking. And it was this, 100-day, 110-day competition with feral mine horses and things like that. And in those days, this is the very first one we did. And I think it has to be about 8 years, maybe 6, 7 years or something ago.
Yeah.
And she was like, I want to do this competition where these trainers take these horses, these rescue horses, and put like 100 days on them and just show people what they can do. And then that helps get adopted. And it was phenomenal because I was like, for these young trainers, it could be a hugely beneficial opportunity to showcase their talents in a more of a platform that normally they wouldn't get, and you have,
Sure.
and it kind of just cut down the grind time, I feel like, for some of these guys and gals. So I was like, yeah, I mean, heck, I'm in, it doesn't matter to me. I was terrified because I'm like, me judging something. I'm like, I always, like we talked about yesterday, I hate the judging word and the connotation that goes with it. I'm like, I don't really want to judge you, but I'm like, I feel your pain half the time. But
Sure.
it was really cool. And then seeing the competition in the beginning, it was, I want to say we had like maybe 16 horses.
Okay.
Not even. And then there's been times I've come and I was judging, and you're judging like almost 40 horses, and I was like,
Awesome.
holy smokes, this is
Yeah.
awesome. Like the growth. So it's been fun for me to just be kind of throughout it. I've had a couple years where I've missed, because of other obligations or vacations I already had set up. But,
Sure.
really I've pretty much been in it 100% of the time. And I don't understand why they keep asking me back. I guess I haven't made any of these trainers too upset with some of my comments. But, I just think it's been great because you get to see the evolution of the trainers. That's been really cool for me because it's like, not that I am like deeply mentoring these people, but I've seen the growth. I've seen their businesses grow.
That's awesome.
And it's been fun for me because like a lot of these people, it's so hard. Like I tell you, before I come to this event, the 100 days before, I try to completely block out any Heart of Phoenix, any of the trainers postings and stuff like that, because
Sure.
I don't want to get these biases.
Right. Sure.
But just watching these guys and gals, and Brenda even, into judging it, and Adam's judged it before and stuff.
Sure.
So, like they go from competitors to judges to
So cool.
competitors, and
Yeah.
they kind of go through the full evolution. And I think they just do a phenomenal job with what they're doing.
That's awesome. You mentioned like how it helps the trainers kind of do that grind
Yes.
of horsemanship.
Yes.
I think anybody who trains can relate.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that grind. What
Oh
do you
my
mean when you
gosh.
say that?
So, like the parts when you're just, it's like with any, young business owner, you're killing yourself for nothing. You're going 24/7, no down days. You kind of get in that spot where you're, you have to deal with all these horses that are, you kind of compromise yourself a little bit, and sometimes because you're having to work for yourself, you don't have fallback plans, or I didn't anyways. That was kind of one of the best pieces of advice my big brother ever gave me. He's like, if you want to train horses, never have another job. He said, don't you dare get another job, because if you do, you will sacrifice what you're dreaming about doing here for security and safety.
Wow.
And I was like, that was a powerful thing. It hit me hard, and I was like, that's very true. And so I didn't. I never got a second job. I just found anything I could do in the horses. And when I moved to North Carolina, I was new. I was not known. I didn't have a base here. I didn't have clientele here. I hadn't really done many clinics on my own. I went from working for my brother to working for myself.
Okay.
And everybody assumes that, just because of my last name and, my family history and things like that, that it was just cake, for me. But what was actually the most beneficial thing for me in the beginning was my wife and I are equine massage therapists too. So that got me into more barns that I would never have gotten into otherwise.
Sure. Okay.
Doing the massage, and I could work on the horse, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, your horse is pretty sore here or tight here. Are you working on softness? Are you struggling with these things? And they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, how'd you know? I was like, well, I can kind of feel it, where you're working on this horse and, what you're dealing with here. And I was like, well, maybe try this. And then if it works, call me back the next time you come out for a massage. We can talk about it a little bit like that. And then so a massage would then go into a lesson, would maybe go into a training horse or a clinic spot or something like that. So that was actually one of the most beneficial things, because I could talk to more people in a much less kind of aggressive setting where I'm like, hey, you want to do a clinic or something like that. I could kind of ease my way into it and say, look, I do clinics. I teach people how to train and things like that. So be happy to come out and work with you and your horse and then do a massage after, And
I love that, especially as because you were giving, right?
Yeah.
Like you were giving first. Like they're paying for the massage, but then you're like, hey, try this. Let me give you a little bit added.
Absolutely.
And that is so powerful, because a lot of people are, like you're saying, I'm sure a lot of people assume, and you were talking about that at dinner a lot the other night too.
Yeah.
People assume like, oh, he's Lyons, so, he just, had everything handed to him.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it's not like a LeBron Bronny.
Right, right. Oh, that would have been nice, but I know my dad's like, yeah, he's coming. Oh, great. That would have been phenomenal.
But, that's pretty cool, because I'm a huge believer in the power of giving, right?
Absolutely.
And it's this cliche, but you always get so much more in return than what you end up giving out. And it's more meaningful, and you're creating relationship, trust, credibility, all that kind of stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it building on that, building on those foundations rather than you should just listen to me because I'm an authority figure. I mean, good grief. I was 20 something. I mean, half of these people, have been riding longer than I've been alive. Why are they going to listen to me? It's like, they had no reason to need to listen to me. Only just the only thing I'd done is, I just did it every single day. And, the things that, started to become second nature. And I'm sure you can attest to this, is the things sometimes you take for granted, that's somebody else's goal, and it's like, you kind of have to recalibrate your thinking a lot of times.
Tell me a little bit about that, recalibrating your thinking, especially, growing up in a horseman culture, working for your brother, growing up around your dad. What are some of those ways that you've had to recalibrate to kind of make sure that you can relate and explain things well to the layman?
Yeah. So it's really good because my dad is he is so good at, he's like, remember that 90% of your clientele are not performance riders. And that was really big for me, because at the time, Josh and I, Josh was really pushing towards reining and performance training. So it was really, really fun for me as a young trainer, because I was working, like I told you last night, my brother, my sister, they're phenomenal horsemen and women.
Sure.
And they're amazing to sit and watch and do things. And like I told you, I mean, Josh is he's hard to watch sometimes because it's like you just get so frustrated because you're like, oh my gosh, that would have taken me 2-3 weeks to get done, and you're in and out in 2 minutes. And I'm like, you know, so there was days I just wanted to choke him because I was like, why are you so good at what you're doing? And and it was hard because I was like, oh my goodness, like I'll never be able to make that 2-minute change like that. So I was like, okay, well, I just got to set myself up to go through the steps. And then my dad, you know, he is so good at breaking things down. So I really got a good education and from him, breaking the lesson plans down, working through those things, and you know, really, really understanding that. But the biggest thing that actually helped me recalibrate is my wife, when we got married, went through a big bout of fear. And nothing happened. We had no traumatic accidents, nothing like that. Just that time in our life was the people we were working for, they had some just amazingly horrific accidents. And I don't know if it's because Julia's super empathetic and like these ladies were just laying it on her and, you know, constantly laying. And she had taken about, I want to say 6 months to a year off of riding.
Okay.
To like plan the wedding, and we did it on her grandparents' farm, you know, that's been in our family for 8 generations or whatever. And so we were like rebuilding the barn and, you know, landscaping and doing all these things and, you know, making the decorations ourselves because we were so friggin' broke. And you know, it was just fun. But you know, she went after we got married, she was like, golly, I'm like scared. And it was hard for me to understand because this is the same woman that when I met her is a trick rider and, you know, hanging off the side of her horse, dragging, standing, you know, taking the flag down, you know, the pavement during the parades and stuff like that. And I'm like, what happened? You know, like, how are you afraid? And she just, I don't know. And so that was a hugely good time in our lives. It wasn't fun by any means, but it was very powerful for us because, she's developed this amazing Ride Fearless program through it, and kind of on the backside of what she had done, and it made me kind of recalibrate because some of the things that I didn't even notice that I wasn't paying attention to, she was like, Michael, those are things that actually make me nervous. And I was like, oh, okay, so if it makes you nervous, then it probably will make somebody else nervous. And then it really, she's so good at always telling me like, hey, it's in the details, because I'm a very like meat and potatoes, then we'll flesh out the details later thinker. I guess that comes from my dad being like a engineering thinker. He's like, and I get lost and I'm like, no, we're just gonna go in and do it. We'll figure it out in the middle of it. And you know, I've learned most of my things trial by fire. Gotcha. And so that's been kind of fun. But you know, with her, she helped get me down to thinking about the little things that I didn't actually notice. And once she did that, it really made us more powerful as horsemen, because you know, the things that I was neglecting were things that other people would be highly appreciative of. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so simple. Like, but for their feelings, like you said, you know, most of our clientele are people that aren't us.
Right.
And that was another one of those big lessons that I learned from my dad was, you never train a horse for you. You always train and think about the person you are working for. And what are their values? What are their core values? So it's, you know, those are the things that are
that is
really big.
huge. And I hope that young trainers who are watching this hear that.
Yeah.
Because that is what makes, to me, like that's what makes the difference between a person who trains a horse and sends it home and they have problems and this and that and they end up coming back, or, you know, they're upset with you or whatever, versus the person who sends back a really solid horse, so that there's a partnership that can going be built. To build and stand the test of time. And of course, you know, there's always the support, right?
Yes.
Like, it's like when you're training a horse for somebody, it's like they, like it or not, they become family, right?
Yes.
And so it's so important to make sure that there's continuing support as well, because that horse isn't going to be with you.
Right.
They're going to have lesser experienced hands, people who maybe are struggling with fear, anxiety, or whatever. And I love that because
Yeah.
that is huge and leads to a lot of success when that horse goes home.
Right. And then too, also what we do is, we encourage the riders to, you know, we give a lesson every week in our training horse programs, so or every other week. And so they come and they at least get a couple lessons. If they want more, then I mean, by all means, please come. Because again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if I can ride your horse like that.
Right.
Of course we can ride horses. That's what we do. But the goal really at the end of the day is you're successful riding your horse. And maybe the performance level slides a little bit, but at the same time, a slid performance for what we're doing is a gain for them. And that's what we're trying to do. And then, you really, again, my passion for the training and stuff like that isn't the training of the horse. That's kind of the easy part, but it's really teaching and educating the people.
I love that. Yeah.
Because it's like my philosophy on teaching is if you can take the people that know the least and push the bottom up
right.
somewhat,
yes.
Where in the heck is the top going to go?
Absolutely.
And like, what are we going to see? What are the ripples that are going to push the top of the training industry up? And like, maybe these people down here stepping into more things they never thought would be possible. Like being successful. Maybe showing or doing these trail rides or competitions, and they just are having so much fun that they don't look at it like a job or things like that, because for most of our clientele, this is the release.
Yeah.
So now it doesn't come without effort.
Sure.
But you don't just get a pull old Fluffy out of the stall once every other month and have the same ride.
Right.
I mean, those horses are worth their weight in gold if you can, but
sure.
It comes with effort, but it's very worth it because you get to be and you get to be in a culture that is so can be so amazing, and you can see the country that you ride from a perspective, that you might not be able to, on a four-wheeler or on a, gator or something like that.
Do you drive at all? You drive horses at all?
I do ground driving in my unbroke program, but I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to like hooking something to them.
Man, we got to get you on a wagon.
I put a shovel behind them and I'll, whack them along. But my gosh,
I love driving for that reason. It's different. Like, I don't know what it is, but when you drive and you go down the road and like it just takes you back and you're hearing that clip clop and you're going to so cool. I love driving more than I love riding.
You said that the other day and I was like, I might have to try it now, but I've just never been in a spot where I was like, we talked about our friends in San Antonio and stuff like that. I was like, I was in a perfect opportunity to just try it, but I never really thought in that moment, like, hey, I might want to take a whirl at this, but man, I don't know. My dad does it. He had his horses that were broke. He went to Gettysburg and did one of the reenactments up there.
Oh, cool.
Had one of his horses and pulled a wagon with my mom and him in it, and just a little single driver. And so I never actually did it because, that was the thing I was telling you. I didn't actually ride horses till I was 18.
Sure.
And I actually didn't really ride until I was almost 19. I just quit, all my high school sports because we were going to Road to the Horse. And that was in 2009. And so I actually quit basketball and everything like that to just spend time with my parents preparing, because we were preparing our horses for the, and that competition back then. You had to do, your little freestyle, you had to do the unbroke, you had to do a clinic, you had to do these things. And so I just spent time that winter preparing with my parents, watching them train and doing things like that. And it really wasn't until Road to the Horse that I really got kind of that struck by lightning moment that, I was like, wow, I think I want to do this. And it wasn't because, like we talked about, like my dad was a rock star, but what happened was I got walked up to because I was just standing in the booth, you know, helping sell and helping educate on some of the products that we had. And I mean, so many people came up and was like, "Oh my gosh, your dad changed my life." Not even through the horses, like through the horses, but not even through, just by taking the time to talk to him. And I was like, wow, that I think is more of what his legacy is, more than training horses, is just how daggone much he cared about each and every single rider. That I was like, you know, that's a huge part, you know. It's so cool. And I was like, good night, I'm kind of want to do this. I didn't even tell him that I wanted to do it then, you know. And I mean, I was so bad. This is Brandy's favorite story to tell. And anytime we'll go and do clinics after the other, she loves to just harass me with this story. I was so bad. I had no idea how to like train. Like I cleaned the stalls and fed the horses. Those were my two jobs as like a 15-year-old. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, these wildebeests freaking eat at 5 o'clock. That's as soon as I'm done. I'm hanging out with my friends after school. You know, we're doing whatever. And I was like, I don't want to go home at 5 o'clock to go pick up poop. Like, this is terrible. And so at the Road to the Horse, it was a little cooler in Tennessee than we had anticipated. So we had to blanket the horse.
Sure. Okay.
And I blanketed the horse that I really, really liked a lot. His name was Charlie. He was one of my dad's horses. And I put a blanket on backwards. And I was looking at it and I was like, that don't really look right. So Brandy just freaking harassed me about it. And she still to this day, I'll go into a clinic and, you know, somebody asks, you know, how do you blanket a horse? And I'm like, oh, you put the butt on the head and it looks right, you know, and everything like that. But that's how ignorant to it all I was. And, you know, that's one of the things is you don't have to be, like, even as a professional's kid, it wasn't something that I was, you know, so overly used to doing, you know, all these different things. Well, so I had to learn from zero.
Know, and a lot of people assume that, you know, just with anybody, with like your kid's not going to do exactly what you do.
Right,
and
correct.
It doesn't mean that they have those interests.
Right.
You hear that with horse people a lot, not with your family, but with a lot of horse families.
Yeah.
It's like, God, I wish my kids loved the horses. They want nothing to do with the horses.
Well, yeah.
And it's interesting too, because that's when I did talk to your dad, that's a conversation that we had. I asked him just a lot about like kind of family dynamic and things like that. And so that was interesting, getting his perspective on all of that. But let me cut back to Road to the Horse.
Yeah. So
because I distinctly remember my mom bought me that. I don't know if it was a DVD, I think. We had DVDs then. There was a DVD. Yeah. She bought me that DVD. And I remember, like, that changed horsemanship for me.
The 2009 DVD, okay.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I'd never seen, I mean, it was revolutionary. Nobody was doing anything like that at that time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. Like, it just changed everything to see those horsemen take those horses from essentially being untouched to, you know, dragging stuff behind them, walk, trot, cantering, loping them, all that kind of things. And I mean, that just, till this day, I can remember exactly where I was watching that, right? And so I'm like, wow, like, that's the kind of horseman I want to be. I want to be able to take a horse and do that kind of stuff. And it's funny because when I talked to your dad, he's like, you know, the interesting thing about that is he's like, you know, I kind of like, I appreciated the opportunity of being able to do that.
Yeah.
But I hate that it showcases, you know, kind of that quick turnaround, right?
Absolutely.
And that people don't get to see, like, one, you know, these are very highly skilled professionals.
Yeah.
Who it looks like they're doing it in 3 days, but it's really 3 decades of experience or whatever that they were putting into that moment. And then, you know, what those horses go through afterwards, it's not like, you know, now you can just ride that horse down the road type thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, like, for the longest time when I was training horses as a young trainer, like, I was like, okay, great. they did in 3 days. I'm gonna try to get on a
Right.
horse in one day.
3 days. Yeah,
I'm like, I'm gonna try to get on a
absolutely.
horse in one day.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, you can't even understand like the it's broke in 3 days. Like, yeah, right. Like what is it broke to do?
So yeah, lots of hitting the ground, right?
Yeah.
And then lots of horses that I did not do justice
Yeah.
to, you
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely.
Um, and with age and experience,
Yep.
things change and you get a little bit better
Yep.
perspective. But that's just interesting that so it sounds like we're around the same age too,
Yeah.
from what you're saying.
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
what you're
Absolutely.
saying. But I remember at that time, getting that DVD and it really transformed my horsemanship. It showed, especially just like the techniques and the
Yep.
way that you could work with horses where it didn't have to be like a rodeo,
Yeah.
and to see that connection, watching you work with that mare yesterday,
Mm,
just like the softness, the communication that is so hard for an untrained eye to even begin to understand like what's happening there.
right.
And that is where I first started to develop, kind of modeling that, but uh, that sense of feel
Yeah.
and timing,
Yeah.
which is kind of like a space, for me, it's like a space and time thing where
Yes.
everything stops and you can feel that
Yeah.
connection with that horse, and it's so incredible. I always talk about it like it's a drug to me. It's
Yeah.
an addiction.
Yeah.
I love that feeling. I want to ask you about. I want to go back to the fear with
Yeah. Yeah.
Julie. Tell me a little bit with Julia. Sorry, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, so how did she work through that, and what was that journey like? Because there are a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's a couple of really cool things here. One, you talked about being like 18 before you really started riding,
Yeah.
which a lot of people think that most people in horses have been riding their whole life.
Right.
And you also mentioned about Julia's fear, and I think that a lot of people feel like, oh,
Yeah.
these are horse people. They never experience fear. Talk a little bit more about that and what that journey was
Yeah.
like.
Well, I mean, I wish she was here. She could.
I know,
I
right?
know it would have been so good for her. But and I'll just tell you from my perspective, what she did, and it was really pretty amazing because I mean, we were still doing clinics during this time too. So she was helping me. We traveled around a lot and we were teaching and stuff like that. And it was just it was hard for her because she kind of felt like imposter syndrome pulling up. She's like, how can I teach these people to train and ride horses when I'm terrified?
Mm.
And it wasn't that the information that she was using or doing was incorrect at the time, but it was just a matter of teaching herself how to kind of use those things. And the woman's amazing. She's been starting colts, again and everything like that. So she's an amazing that she's kind of gone through this deal. But the process is a long, crazy process. And the biggest thing she did is she started diving way down into the science of fear and how it chemically changes your brain and the things that the things that actually happen in your body and things like that. And she was like, okay, so like she started to recognize like, okay, this is a moment that's a fearful trigger for me.
Mm.
And now can I do things and what can I do to start combating that? And
Okay.
things like that. So the other thing though that she really dove into was our horsemanship. She really dove deep and she took a big strong look at it and said, okay, like these are the things, and it comes from reading horses,
Sure.
understanding how the horse dynamic is, how they think, their vision, like we talked about with Lee the other day, things of that nature. And it was just this long process. But one of the most powerful things that I think both of us would say is I was in a place where I couldn't help
Mm.
because what I was doing, all I could do was support her through it. I mean, that was all I could do. Because I mean, I couldn't say, hey, you're going to be fine on it. And she'd just be like, okay, like I can do this.
Right.
And one of the biggest things I think, we were out with my parents in Colorado. And one of the big things that helped her was my dad said, ride where you can, not where you can't. And what that meant was don't just say, you know, I gotta put my big girl pants on or big boy pants on and bounce and just go, you know, cowboy up and get through it, you know, because that isn't a place that's really good to come out of a fear spot. So it's,
Right.
you know, she did a lot of different techniques, you know, breathing boxes, you know, in for 3, hold for 3, out for 3, hold for 3, you know, learning that, regulating your breathing. She did a lot about posture, you know, engaging your psoas, you know, not tightening everything. Don't, you know, try to engage your, I don't remember exactly what the muscle group is called, but not your fight, your flight muscles, but your support muscles, like they call them the dancing muscles, you know, your stuff like that. And, you know, it was really amazing because her going through all that and her understanding all those pieces was huge. And it was terrible because for my sleep it was awful, because she would start reading at night and she would get so excited that, you know, she read something that really resonated with her, and, you know, she's like, oh my gosh, you know, like, hey, you know, this is what I'm like 10:30, 11:30 at night. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. You know, I'm glad this is helping. I can't wait to try it in the morning. You know, not right now, but,
Sure.
you know, I'm like, I'm dying. But, you know, it was really good because it did have her retake a good deep look at our training style and everything like that. And then just slightly modifying it, and then also learning how to help people through that, because it's a terrible spot, because I don't know about you, but I've never felt debilitating fear. So it was one of those things that I could never understand from a spot where some of these people are coming from.
Sure.
And, you know, me, I'm always willing. Like, if you don't feel comfortable, I'm happy to do it for you so that you can see how everything's are going. But that didn't actually help Julia at all, because I was just, you know, she was just kind of kicking them over to me and things like that. And after a while, I would say after a year or two of it, you know, Julia would, you know, do all the groundwork, do everything like that. But she was like, ew, that first set of rides, you know, she was like, can you just do them for me? And I was like, yeah, for sure. And I mean, the girl I would love to ride any horse after a groundwork set with Julia, because she had those rascals so ready.
That's awesome.
I was walk, trot, loping them in no time at all. They never had they were unflappable for the most part. And, you know, she was like, oh, okay, you know, I can do this. And then, you know, as she kind of progressed through. So again, it's like training, you know, it's a very big process. You got to retrain essentially your brain makeup and how you respond to your triggers. And that was huge, because I was like, you know, okay, like, this is what we're going to do. And so we've done a few of our fear retreats. And I mean, it's really interesting, because, like, my house, I have an indoor arena and then I have an outdoor that's, you know, you walk out the back door and you walk, you know, across the like around the barn still, but back to the pastures. I mean, it's got to be 600 feet from my indoor to my outdoor.
Okay.
And some of the classes, I mean, the big hump that we have gone is they go from the indoor to the outdoor and they ride.
Sure. Okay.
And, you know, it's amazing because, you know, the sense of accomplishment these ladies and some guys have gone through is just amazing, because what they're doing is they are literally going through fire. And it's been interesting to me to watch it. You just sit there and you kind of look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what our horses do half the time. Because you got to think about that. It's like half the junk that we're doing, these guys in particular, is you are completely taking a horse that, you know, they have been let down in some capacity by people, and you're saying, look, I'm different people, so you gotta, I mean, you literally gotta learn how to give it over.
Have to, yeah.
And it's
that's
like
tough.
It is tough. I mean, you know, think about, you know, and it's so funny, I always joke about this, but are you semi-type A?
Not really. Like,
are you really
a touch, but
are you very particular in your program?
Well, yes. Okay.
I remember you telling
But
me that last
okay,
time.
yes.
Okay,
But my
so
wife would tell you otherwise in different aspects.
well, okay, so other aspects is that's all right, but
But in
in
the program,
horses,
yes, yes.
how many people have you ever met that are like, I can't trust anybody to take care of this horse the way I'm going to take care of it?
Mm,
So I don't
mm.
understand what it is that horses just bring in the most
Huh.
controlling
Interesting.
people that just want to
Yeah,
control
yeah.
every aspect. And I'm like, good
Don't pick
grief.
horses. Yeah,
Yes,
you're
I'm
right.
like,
You got
get
a
a
good point.
four wheeler. Shut it off. It's like it's so easy, but it's so amazing what these all these people that I meet and teach and come across, they go through and they start learning, and it's so fun that they're the most like, I have to control this,
Sure.
and it's like, it's not a control thing.
Right.
This is built on communication, these trust aspects, things like that, and it's just what these horses are doing. It's like we could all take a lesson,
I mean,
out of the
and you
horses.
said it perfectly when you talked about like you have to give it up.
Yeah,
And there's ways that you can give it up in a controlled environment so that you can prove to yourself and the
yes,
horse that everything's going to be
yes.
okay. This is really, really fascinating. This is so cool.
I really wish Julia was here
I,
for
I
you.
do too. You know what's crazy too? Our one of our like mid-level courses, which is it's called the Fearless Rider program.
Oh, no doubt. Oh, that's amazing.
So,
That's
and so
awesome.
because there are so many people who have
Yes.
suffered big accidents with
Yeah.
horses, and they are passionate about getting back into the saddle,
Yes.
but they're just gripped with fear, right?
Yes.
And so, being able to walk through it like you guys do, I love you talk about the groundwork, which there's more
Yes.
people doing groundwork now.
Oh, I
But-
feel than ever before.
Yes, but there's still so much more I feel
Yeah.
like needs to be done, especially for the lay rider, right?
Yes.
Because like you said, if you're only riding your horse, once a month and you're pulling Fluffy out, like he needs to be worked. You need to connect to make sure
Yes.
that you guys are on the same page.
Yeah.
Make sure he feels good, you feel good. And then you talk about the breathing, which is just huge. I
It's
don't
crazy how much it walks, isn't it?
know. It does.
It's so cool.
And I look stupid when I'm training because
Yeah.
I like exaggerate it and
Yeah.
blow it out. Because it really does just, the physiology is incredible.
Yes.
What being intentional about your breathing,
Yes.
what your breathing does. So this is really, really cool. Oh man. So we're gonna have a lot of stuff to dive
Yeah,
into.
absolutely. I was gonna say, and I mean, I'm gonna have to get Julia either down to Texas with you so that you guys can. I mean, we talk about Carl's thing going 2 hours. I'm sure you and Julia could do an 8-hour deal in a second.
That'd be awesome. So
oh
cool.
my goodness!
So cool.
She geeks out over it. It's so fun to watch her.
So cool. So cool. And the most, it is rewarding to take a horse and watch a transformation that happens with the horse. It is so rewarding to watch a person develop to where they were gripped in fear.
Yes.
And now they're so confident that, they're like, oh, I can ride that horse. Let me just work with them. Let me make sure the communication's good. Let me make sure we're solid, or they're instructing and teaching people. And that just does it for me. Like, that's just so cool.
It's that, and that's like you say, I mean, the most rewarding, like the horses, that's cool. Like, that's great. But I feel like we can almost get that done so fast and without thinking at this point. But it's, again, I feel like it's one of the empowering things in training horses is not the horse part. The horse is just a vessel or a tool that we use to get somebody through, and just to watch it translate through their life, like just the ripple effects.
Yes.
That's what, like, you just sit there and you're like, holy cow, the person you were that I met is so much different than the person that you are. And it's just like, this is who you were, the whole time, but just, fear or, something like that, and too, there's different levels of the fear and stuff like that. Some people just have a small bit and everything like that. But one of the biggest things we try to preach through is confidence through understanding. And doing that and just understanding how the horse works, how to communicate clean and clear, that's a big one. And, then kind of going through and just transferring that throughout your whole ride is like, that without a shadow of a doubt. And it's all the things that really my dad has built through his program. I mean, it's all there.
Yeah.
But it's just taking it and just shining a light on this part
Sure.
is so powerful, because it's like, some of these people are like, oh, I was doing a lot of the things, I just wasn't going far enough.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing, and with like the groundwork,
Yep.
we all see in these things, these competitions, we want to ride. Like that's kind of the goal, is to ride the horse.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
we kind of put this connotation on riding, or groundwork. It's like, well, that's just a stepping stone to my goal.
Yep.
But I mean, you could do months and months
Oh, yeah.
of groundwork to get these horses ready. It's just how much are you comfortable with leaving it to chance, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Yeah. And when and that's the thing, that's the thing that's hard. Like, as a professional, you can ride anything. It's not that big of a deal, but it's getting out of that habit and being methodical in order to, again, not just set an example, but to show people, like, because for me, there became a point too where it was almost embarrassing if on that first ride that horse broke into. To me, there's a transition where it's like, this is nuts. Like, this horse shouldn't be breaking into. They shouldn't be bolting or taking off or doing this silly stuff where it looks like a rodeo and you're having fun or whatever.
Right, or not. Whether you're having fun with it or not, it's like, I mean, it is big, because you can get these horses so darn prepared.
Yes.
That, it isn't this crazy traumatic thing. And that's one of my things that my dad was touching on is, with the Road to the Horse, is it doesn't have to be the show. It can be the show, absolutely, and that is culturally kind of our past. With just bronc them out and get on and go. You call the bronc rider and get them on there and go.
Hold on, yeah.
One of my favorite movies is John Wayne the Cowboys. Man, oh my gosh, all those kids bronking that little horse out. I'm like, I rode the rough off of her, sir, and I'm like, okay, like that's kind of what we get. It's like we get into that spot where people just hire us to be the little kids on the Cowboys, and it's not one of those things a lot of people don't even know, but Josh won the very first Road to the Horse.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was called In a Whisper then, and it was...
That's right.
Yeah, it was in a parking lot, in 3 round pens in a parking lot with just dirt on the parking lot. Josh said it was so daggone hot, he thought he was going to die, but it was him, Pat Pirelli, and I believe Craig Cameron.
Okay.
I think. I'm not sure. You'll have to check that one. But he won the first one, but he didn't even actually lope his horse. He's like, my horse is not ready to lope.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to lope him.
Yeah.
And he did everything, but he ended up winning it. And so that thought of it doesn't have to be the rodeo is so different, even from then to now. Even like I feel like there's so much more where we are in that thought process of, it doesn't have to be a traumatic experience for, like, I mean, good grief, if you had the owner there the first day you were getting ready to ride that horse and it broke in two, what's that going to do for them?
Right.
They're going to be like, well, God, that's in there now.
Absolutely.
And whether you got, and you hit the deck or not, there, I have always people ask, like, if my horse jumps around, is he going to learn that bucking things off his back is going to get things off his back? Not really. I mean, it's just a reaction, but the ones that do learn things really well and learn how to buck really well, they get really good at it.
Yeah, when they have that repeated opportunity and they learn that's the way out.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. One of the things that I hear about you and the way that you guys work with horses is you're constantly evolving, you're changing, you're adapting.
Yep.
Which I feel is so important. It's really easy to get super rigid about, oh, this is my program, this is what we do, this is what we teach. But every horse is so different. Context is always a huge thing.
And then too, working the different horses, like these ferals versus a domestic horse, that you're going to have to change your program somewhat to adapt to what that horse needs, or an aggressive horse like you got in, and things of that nature. You got to kind of pull out all the stops sometimes on some horses. And I think it's good as a horseman to constantly evaluate your program, because if the thing that I tell people the most is I'm an advocate for go ride with everyone.
Yes, absolutely.
Ride with everybody. Don't get into a cult.
Right.
If the first words in the program is you cannot do any other programs or it will
Ridiculous.
mess this up,
Yeah.
that's my first
Big
red
red
flag to
flag.
run. Um, because you're just going to be there forever. And so I'm huge because like I feel like too one of the things that the horse business, the entire like trainers especially, I just feel like if we had more collaboration
Yes.
between trainers, it would be so much stronger for us because I mean there's so many people that want to ride horses and things like that.
Yeah.
Like maybe somebody in my program would do well,
Sure.
better, and thrive in your
Sure.
program.
And vice versa. 100%. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's where I feel like it's I don't like the hoarding
Yeah. And
mentality.
like you said, the equine industry, if you can call it that, it's massive.
Yeah,
And it's untapped.
yeah.
There's so much.
Underserved.
Yeah, it really is. And there's so many people who are looking for things that will gel for them. And
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. The more that you can help plug people in, collaborate, work together,
Yeah.
it just is so much better for the industry as a
Yeah.
whole. And the more that people are focusing on pouring into the people,
Yeah.
then we know that the horses are going to benefit from
Yeah,
that.
and you won't get people that sour out,
Yeah,
or do things like that because I mean the biggest thing that we need in the world is more influx of people to the industry.
sure.
So if somebody that just got out of the industry is like, oh my gosh, I'll never go back because the people are horrible.
Right, right.
It's like, so that's not a great great look and a great building, business standpoint for the horse industry. So it's like, if you're terrible with customer service, that you're not going to get repeat customers.
Right.
So that's where, you got to enjoy and I always tell my young trainers that are coming through, you're not in the horse business, you're in the people business.
Yeah.
Because as much as you love the horse and as much as you work horses, they can't pay your bills.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta have
The people have to do it.
For sure.
And so you have to be willing. And this is so fun because it's like my friends that are more prickly, it's like, you can just see their skin crawling and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, maybe just start being an assistant somewhere. If you don't want to have the headache of being the, head honcho around and have to deal with all of the problems constantly, then maybe be an assistant for a while.
Sure.
And just focus on you riding horses. And maybe you decide long term that running a facility isn't your calling, but being the most amazing assistant trainer.
Sure. Yeah.
That is a hugely worthwhile thing because we can
100%.
all use amazing people as support.
Yes.
That's
and finding those people, because there's people in your life who would love to do that stuff, right?
Yes.
There's certain things that I just hate doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've been so blessed that there are people on my team or people, that it's like, great. You love being on the phone. You can talk to everybody all day.
I would love it if you did talk to everyone.
All day long. You okay, great. Let's plug you there. And that's where people thrive, doing what they do. Which, like, for horse people, that's why we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
We love
this is what
thing.
we like.
I have a pet peeve. I hate when horse people get around and they complain about, oh, it's so much hard work, or I never get to leave the farm. It's like, shut up.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I think 2020 was a great thing for us because we're like, oh, at least we got a farm to go around, run around on. I mean, good gravy. If I was stuck in a big city apartment complex and not able to go anywhere, I would have gone stir crazy so bad. At least I could go walk around my place and still work my horses every day. And
we felt so blessed as well.
Yeah.
We really, really did.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like, thank God for this.
Yeah.
And big things, and it is work, but that's the thing, is anything worthwhile is going to be work.
100%.
And it's not I was telling somebody last night, it might have been us at the table, as like the rock star generation of horse trainers, I think is gone.
Sure.
Because there are a blue million of us now.
Right. Yes.
There is not.
And I think the industry is better for it because there's just more diversity, different
fresh ideas.
Niches. Fresh ideas. And there's definitely a downside to like the clips and reels and stuff like that, right? because again, people can take stuff out of context
Yes.
and not really get the whole story of how to
Yes.
apply that or
Yes.
whether it even makes sense for them and their horse,
Right.
right? But for the people who are really willing to dig in and do the
Yeah.
research and find the long form content or read the book
Yeah.
that that quote came out of, there's
Yeah.
so much more than ever. There's so much more valuable
Oh,
information out there.
yeah.
It's
Almost
incredible.
overwhelmingly so.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And that's where I feel, that's what I tell a lot of people is like, so one of the analogies that I use is when you're doing your horse training, get a good base. You got to think of a tree,
Yeah,
right?
like that.
So you got to get a good base. And then you start to branch off. So just get comfortable in some program first. Understand the language, understand the lingo,
Yeah,
the whys, what you're looking for, the exercises that kind of are the bread and butter of it. So get a good, strong foundation of a tree, and then start branching out from there. Because if you have no foundation and a bucket load of branches, all you are is easy to tip over. And all you are is easy to push over, and you don't have anything to base off of.
Yep.
So maybe it's not the most amazing program in the world, but just understand it.
Yep.
And then you can add to your foundations, and
Absolutely,
grow and
yes.
keep growing in your foundations and things like that. Understanding, because that's the biggest thing is like we can only do so many things with horses.
Yep.
As far as maneuvers
Yeah.
and things like that. So it's not like we're doing a lot of crazy different maneuvers, but it's the stuff that we say is what's so dramatically different. And that's where I feel like people kind of get they're learning, Spanish here, they're learning, English here, then they're learning Italian over there. And it's like, that's overwhelming for us, especially the older we get, where our learning slows down. But if we can get to where we're in a solid foundation of what we at least know, then we can kind of branch out like that are kind of close, but not exactly the same.
Right.
And then, those things start to draw on, and like riding with more people. And at minimum, you learn what you don't like.
Yeah. And so it's so powerful. You talk about riding with more people, building a base, but then branching out. I am so about that because, and even to the point at Steady Horse, we're always promoting other people's clinics,
Yeah.
other people's courses, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Because you never know what's going to resonate with a particular person or where they are.
Yes.
And I would much rather somebody, that I'm interacting with having an opportunity to have gotten so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
So that they feel more comfortable, more confident,
Yeah.
in whatever you're working in. Even like with the people on our team.
Yeah.
Like I've got trainers that, I'll send out and say, hey, go take some lessons with such and such. Go get some lessons with this person, go do that. And even some guys will be trying to like get my people. I'm like, dude, like if you ever want go do your thing, be happy.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's not like I own you. Yeah, I don't own your soul. Like, good grief, ride with somebody. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, like me, I actually host a lot of clinics at my house, not even just for the thing, but it's so I can continue education or at least bounce ideas.
Yeah.
And that's like, because again, it's like my big thing I want to do is collaboration. Then can't collaborate by yourself.
1,000%.
And that's like, I love the saying, if you feel like you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Absolutely.
So
100%.
I love these guys. It's like when my parents or my brother or my sister comes, it's phenomenal because they can either refocus you on some aspect of what you're doing, help you grow,
sure,
or, just at least help you understand something deeper or better.
That's awesome.
I mean, I think even the last time my dad was with me, he's in his paradigm shift right now in his training I was telling you about the other day. But and like I said, I love it. I feel like it's an amazing concept to start doing. I just feel like at the moment he's going to meet a little bit of resistance from us that know what we're doing like too well. Like we're like, okay, like this is working for me for a long time. It's a hard thing for me to switch off of it at this moment.
Gotcha, yeah.
But I feel like at least going and learning it can draw you into it. Because I mean, there was things, and I tell my people this all the time, is like there was an exercise he was trying to teach me, and it took me, I would say, almost 10 full years. And this is somebody that does this every day. 10 full years to finally figure out what the heck he was trying to tell me about it. And once I did, I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And he's like sitting there very patiently for 10 years, giving me the same lesson, giving me the same lecture, doing the same thing, and never once wanting to kill me, even though I'm probably, out of all the kids, one of his worst students. I'm not sure. Probably because I've probably the biggest opinions of us, but I think that he was so good. He's just so good at just, he always looks at me and he's like, you'll get it someday. And
I love that story though, because there's a lot of people that can relate to that. That resonates with, where they've been working on something. No, 100%. You're right. And there's a moment where it's like, whoa.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's like you said yesterday, we are no better than anybody else.
Absolutely.
We've just dove deeper into what we're doing right now.
1,000%. Yeah.
That's it. I mean, that's the only difference. It's not that, I have an amazing ability with it. I feel like, if anybody has an amazing ability in my family, it's Josh. But I feel like Brandy and my dad and I, we have had to work our butts off to get, even sniff near Josh. And that's not to take away the work Josh has done. The man has worked his hindquarters off and to develop his skill. But that's like, you just look at like the things that he can do, and it is frustrating, because you're like, good grief, but that's the thing, for everybody. It's not that we're better or more talented or anything like that. We just unfortunately have to do it every single day, where they have the option of not.
And the repetition hones those skills, right? Really, I can think of, you talk about like learning an exercise and it taking 10 years. I can remember riding with Fran Hancock, and she was teaching me about footfall, and it took me forever to get it, and I felt so stupid. And she, like you're saying, your dad was, she was so patient with me.
Yes.
I remember in that clinic, I was the only guy in that clinic, which is a whole nother.
Right. Normally you will be. Anytime you go to a clinic, there are very few times that it is outweighed.
So all the ladies were making fun of me.
Yeah, they're like, why
can't you get this? Some of the ladies were my clients.
Yeah.
But she was just so gracious. So I have to ask, what was the exercise?
It was making the hindquarter lead each direction without actually having to ask. So it was a hugely cerebral exercise, I felt like.
Okay.
So you really had to think about it, and it took me a while to get my horses kind of broke to that point to even be able to try it. That's why I feel like it took me so long, because like I somehow in my life have perpetuated myself to only having young horses all the time. I don't understand why. But it, like, they can all move the hips, but they can't move the hips to the level that he was trying to take them to. And that was, so it was a hip movement. So it's a very basic exercise.
Sure.
But it was the double black diamond of doing it. And I was like, good gracious. But once he came down and I had a horse that was a little older, a little broker, and he was able to kind of sit with me for, I think he was there for 2 weeks.
And just for explanation's sake, because the lay person won't even understand what you're explaining here. And most people will never get to the level, will never even aspire to get to that level where they can do that. But what he's talking about is, like, instead of just turning your horse's nose to a direction to drive, which most people do, right? You pick that rein up and you drive that horse that way. It's so much more powerful when you can get that hind end to lead that movement, and now that horse is tracking in that direction.
Yes.
And there's a level of horsemanship where you get that really, really soft, where most people won't even see that you're doing that. They just think you're turning your horse, but you're really driving that hind end up underneath them and driving them there. And it's a different way to ride.
Right. And it is a very different way to ride. And that's where it's so difficult, because, as people, we ride what we see. And the hindquarters are behind you.
Sure.
So it's such a thing where it's an out of sight, out of mind kind of a deal. I feel like.
Yeah.
So again, that's why I say it's a very thinky exercise, because you're like, you're focusing on something you can't see, and you just have to feel it. And it's amazing, because it's like, once you start to understand, the footfalls, or where this is going, or the hindquarters, where it's at actually, it propels you another level forward. But the hardest thing about horses is, and this is why I'm very careful with teaching my little kids, is once you understand control, you won't ever sacrifice control again. So my young people, I want them to be wild and crazy and enjoy being psychopaths on their horses for a while.
Interesting. Yeah.
Until it's a little dangerous. And then I'm like, and then once they really start like kind of begging you to learn, like, I just want to learn this, and I'll teach them just that so that they may be a little safer. But I don't, and I think that was one of the amazing things about, my family is it's none of the kids, my nieces and nephews, us, we were never pressured to ride. We were never, like, you're going to ride or else. It was actually kind of one of those things where it was hilarious because like my sister Brandy had this horse and she would want to bring her little girlfriends over and dad, saddle my horse. They ride for 5 minutes and then be done. And then they come back, an hour and a half later, dad, saddle my horse. And he's like, well, you better start riding bareback till you can saddle your own horse. I don't have time to chase you around. And so it was one of those things where it was like, you kind of just had to learn how to do and just be what you were going to be for yourself until you just started learning and developing and doing those things. And, it was never a high pressure situation to actually go ride, it was, because again, it was like it's your family's job. So it's not like not every kid wants to join the family business.
Yeah.
And that's where it's interesting that way too, because you're not only developing kind of your riding, your fun. We all had that time where like my dad calls it the wee factor, where you just get on a horse and you're just like wee, just grinning ear to ear. I mean, tears flying because you were just breakneck speeds. As a kid, Julie, my wife, she rode since she was 4 years old.
Okay. Yeah.
And she was just like thrilled to be on a horse.
Gotcha.
And then, but for me, when I started riding, I started the day I started riding, the day I started learning how to train. So I never got the wee factor out of just riding horses. So my wee factor was always the teaching. So that's why I kind of am so passionate about the teaching side versus like the riding. I'm like, I love, horses. I love training. I love, building a connection, foundation, things like that. But, I'm so much more into the people,
awesome.
and like teaching people because that's where I get my drug from.
That's awesome.
It's like, I'm like, if I can get you to do it and I can make you understand it, that's where I am so much more happy because it's like, I can do this enough now that I'm like, you leave your horse here for a month and I'll have a lot knocked out, that you're pretty excited about. And sometimes, I actually overtrained the horse, got it too far along, and the people were like, what the frick is this?
Yeah, sure.
This is a rocket. And I was not wanting to ride a rocket, so I had to learn that.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
I was like, whew.
Yeah, that's an interesting, thing there is that, again, going back to your training for other people, but just because it's a horse that you want to ride doesn't mean that it's going to be ideal for your client to ride. In fact, it can be very dangerous.
Too many buttons and too many options.
Yeah, I had one of my trainers climbed on my horse, and I have a double standard here, right?
Yeah.
So, I teach people, no, like you want your horse to be ridden by as many people, different experiences, beginner riders, more advanced riders, kids, whatever, right? Yeah. And so the horses in our program, that come for training, like they get ridden by the trainers. By the time they're done, we have an after school program. So like the little kids are riding these horses, right? And there's some people like, I don't want anybody riding. Well, this program's not a good fit for you, right?
Right.
But for my horse.
Right. It's like, no, you don't get to go to the after school program. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Isn't that funny how that works?
It's crazy, right? And there was a particular exercise that I was working on with one of my trainers, and she was having a hard time. So I said, climb on my horse.
Yep.
And she goes to do it, and the pony's like, oh my God.
Yeah. What is this? Yeah.
It's like, God, he's so bendy and touchy and this and that. Yeah. But that's how I like him, for my horse, but I'd never train a horse that way. And it's just interesting, kind of what your preferences are, what you're looking for, what makes sense for you. Let me ask you this. We'll kind of bring it full circle here. But I think that again, you talk a lot about like collaboration,
Yep.
right? People branching out,
Yep.
have to have a good foundation and learning more. Like in your mind, like what are the positive, cool things that you see about the horse industry today? Like where things are going? What excites you?
I think the biggest thing that is really, really encouraging is how good they're getting very
Mm,
fast. The trainers that I'm seeing, there's a lot of trainers that I'm seeing that get very good very quickly. And then too, it's like some of these guys and gals that are like the frontiersmen and women
mm,
of like a particular thing,
okay.
and like uh, bridleless riding or um, just the different sciences that are going on with exploring into horses a little bit more. Um, you know, I mean, just, think about this part is how far has vet tech
Sure.
come in the
Yeah.
last 10 years from where, we watched even yesterday a lameness locator.
Sure.
And, I've been dealing with those
Pretty
things
cool.
for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Pretty
like, and
cool.
those are the things is like, we're getting to where we can know so many more things. And it's so exciting because there's so many new health benefits. There's so much new study to what the horses are, what is so good for them, what is bad for them, um, the different feeds that are getting, there, and then how people are training horses.
Sure.
How people are just going out and training horses. There's so many more that are coming out with a let's work together kind of a mentality with the horse versus, I'm going to shove the horse in a box. The horse is going to be in this box and it's going to be a thing. And we get that, not 70s, style of riding.
Yeah.
There's still some of it and there's,
Yeah. Yeah.
little
Yeah.
pockets of it and everything like that. But I feel like there's so many more people that actually are horsemen and women now too, that I just feel like the information is going so fast. I feel like it's kind of like, cell phones from when I was a kid,
Mm,
like 12.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You have a little flip phone or the little Nokia brick thing
Sure.
and then now you got this computer in your pocket.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing, those things, because you kind of sit and you look at it like how fast that all went. And that's how fast I feel like horses are going right now. And like,
Right. Right.
like what we're trying to do, the breeding. I feel like there's so many people trying to breed really nice, well-minded horses really quickly. Like the breeding has come a long way. That technology is
Tell
quite
me a
amazing.
little bit more about that, especially in your industry, right?
Hmm.
Like, breeding is a huge thing,
Yeah.
right? And that's something that, like, it's not just willy-nilly. Like, you're very intentional in
Yes.
performance horses as
Yes.
far as the bloodlines and all that.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, so I even just bought a stud recently, that I'm hoping that will turn into something that he can start breeding. But for me, there was a whole lot of things that I was looking for. So my parameters were pretty tight and very rigid, what I wanted, because, we have the 5-panel testing, 6-panel testing, 7-panel testing now, where you test for these old diseases, like a HERDA, G-bed. Have you heard of HERDA?
Yeah,
That one
yeah.
is where the skin sloughs off and stuff like
And
that.
there's more and more in
IMM
that.
now. Yeah, IMM is a big one right now that people are seeing a lot of. So, um, an IMM is a muscle wasting disease. So the horse can just go from being fit and great to look like
No
just a
tone.
walking skeleton
Yeah,
in a night.
yeah,
I mean, it's an
crazy.
amazingly scary disease. So some of the things that we look for in our horses and things like that is clean genetics that way. No juvenile arthritis,
Mm,
things like that, because those are things that can crop up. Bone structures, feet, things like that. So these were all things I was looking for in a horse that I was wanting to get is good solid bone structure, good, like kind of not quite the foundation bones and big old pie plate feet and things like that. Like I
sure.
don't need all that, but I just need a good solid built horse, but is genetically clean, no signs of arthritis, things of that nature, that has decent bloodlines. But all these things, like I think one of the biggest things, like in breeding too, that we're so good at right now is selective breeding and
Mm,
specialized breeding,
sure.
and that's where some of these things, will start cropping up because your breeding pool gets a little small, but then you have to widen your base out again and
Right.
figure out outcrossing and things of that nature. Because like any of your performance horses, it's a sure bet to breed to the best ones. So, but there has to be breeders that are willing to take chances on young studs, junior stallions,
deviating outside of that genetic
outside
pool.
of the norm.
You don't end
you
up
have
with
to be the
line breeding.
trendsetter somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a big part, because it's like, you have to have these people that are willing to take a shot and gamble a little bit on something different. And because then you get one that pops over here, and it's like, okay, now we open up the pools over that way a little bit more. So those are amazing things. The breeding is just, it's been fun. It's not necessarily like the main core of my business, but it's been fun because I think, one of the things that we want to do, Julie and I, is we want to have a homebred, shown, trained,
very cool,
and horse, and just see what we can kind of do from, all the way through. That's awesome. Choosing the stallion to all the way up, and see what that horse can do.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we got a couple on the pipeline that are coming through that are
very
exciting.
Cool. Very cool. Last question, because I got to ask you. So when you are, deviating from the proven lines, what are you looking for when you're looking
temperament,
outside?
Mostly.
Okay.
Temperament, conformation, bloodlines, things of that nature. Maybe stallions that I see that may not have popped yet, but I'm like, well, because my biggest thing is, I want to, if I'm breeding or if I'm putting something out, I want somebody that is going to buy a horse from me. They have a horse that's pleasant to look at, but is incredibly trainable. It's not like running a Ferrari around town.
Gotcha.
It's just a good, solid horse they can go do a little bit of everything with. I like the utilitarian horse, like the horse that I can go take and rope. I'm a horrible roper, but one that'll put up with me trying to rope.
Sure.
One that can take me on a trail ride, one that can, maybe handle a small reining or ranch pattern, one that I could collect up and do some Western dressage with.
That's awesome.
And then I can pitch them out and, go do, because it's, horses are so expensive nowadays, and what we need to care for the horses has gotten so expensive nowadays.
Yeah.
I can't have 6 to 8 horses anymore like I used to.
Gotcha.
I can only have 2.
Sure.
And like Lee said, 1 horse per family member, and even that sometimes is too much.
That's our rule.
That's exactly right. I totally fell apart on my rule with the brood mares and stuff like that, and the babies. I'm like, well, got to wait on them anyway, so whatever. Find a hole and stick them in it over there and wait. But yeah, so I just look for that horse that can handle the utility, but doesn't have to be ridden, trained, or presented in such a specific way that it only is convenient on certain days. I
awesome.
want that horse that has the mentality that it can hang out on its own, and you don't need to fret about working it 8 days a week and
sure.
Everything like that. I don't want these things you got to just lunge into the ground or anything like that. I just want one that you can go, is good-minded, can get on, can go from there. Mind is really more of what I'm looking for than anything else, is the trainability and really the forgiveness too. It's like, how forgiving is that horse? When something goes wrong, because it inevitably will go wrong.
Yeah, how much grace are they going to give you?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's really big. I love that.
It's like, that's what I want to put out, is just nice, solid horses like that.
That's so cool, because that is a horse that's going to have a successful future no matter what direction it goes.
Absolutely.
It's not so niched down that it's only got to go to this type of barn.
They need to bring joy.
I love that.
However that horse brings its joy, that's what his job is going to be. It's like, that's what I'm looking for. It's like,
I love it.
If you want to stand and be fat and sassy in a pasture, and that's what makes you happy, great. It's like, with my dad, he was saying, it's like, people don't just own horses to ride horses. That was big, even when you and Sonny and everybody was up there, that hit him like a ton of bricks. Is like, some people just like taking care of horses. I mean, look where we are.
Yep.
We were working for a rescue this weekend. So that's the thing. Some people just enjoy taking these horses out of horrible situations, giving them a better life, and whatever that life, uh, does or kind of, looks like. They just have to be a willing participant in that lifestyle. You know what I mean?
You would hope so,
You
right?
would hope so. I mean, my gosh, some of these
In the
guys'
ideal.
stories is just
Yeah.
horrific.
Yeah. Okay, I know I said that was the last question, but you mentioned your
Whatever
dad.
you want to do,
I've
man.
got one more for you. So one of the other things we talked about with your dad is like, do your horses love you? And
Yes.
and he mentioned that there's kind of a line in the family of
Yes.
where do you fall on that?
Do my horses love me? Yeah, that's such a funny question. It's so funny because I feel like I split the line between my dad and my brother very almost too cleanly
Huh,
sometimes, because I do dive into a lot of that stuff. Like I do want my horse to want to be there and figure out what we're doing. But I also, have ridden and I'm with Josh enough that I'm like, this horse also needs to go. Like as hard as I need to go, that horse needs to follow
sure.
and go there. So as far as you know, but will I give him a treat every once in a while? Yeah, for sure. I want him to kind of like me a little bit, but also I do,
Why does love gotta mean a treat though?
yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, that's what I want. Some of my girls walk through the barn and they're like, "Oh, your horse won't eat this. Your horse won't eat that." I'm like, "Well, he doesn't get these things all the time. I mean, it's not like he's a crackhead when it comes to a watermelon. I mean, my gosh, it's like I don't have watermelons just flowing out my ears all the time to just hammer to him." And but yeah, I mean, I'll do those things, but I like doing a lot of the things the tricks are kind of just fun little party tricks, something different that the horse can go do. But yeah, I mean, I like to hope that my horse really likes me hanging around. But I mean, sometimes I see my stud, he's like, oh God, here we go again. So there's probably days that he's kind of
Sure.
like anything. It's like there's days I'm hit and miss. I'm an acquired taste anyways. So I don't blame him, or I don't blame my little horses at all. But
So I'm hearing you're kind of 50-50 here is what.
I would say I probably straddle the line pretty hard.
Got it. Got it.
I mean, I like to work hard, and I don't mind getting one to do an honest day's work. But at the same time, there's days that he's 100% a marshmallow, and I look at him and they're like, I don't think you want to work today or something like
Sure.
that. Let's just go do something fun
Yeah.
outside. Let's just go hand graze for a little while.
I think
Do
it
something like
changes
that.
too. I hear you because I can relate. I think it changes to like where you are in your life as
Yeah.
well, right? When you're younger and you're grinding, it's like, oh, these horses got to work, 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 work. And then you kind of, I feel like you change it to like grandpa. Right?
That's right. Yeah, time slows down. We're not in the rush to do anything anymore. Yeah, I know. I mean, and that's what I laugh at my dad about all the time, because he's like, "Oh, Michael, you really need to do this. You really need to do that." And I'm like, "Whoa, now." It's like you've been doing this stuff for 50 years now. Chill out. I'm 10 years in, 15 years in, whatever. And I'm like, hey, now, what were you doing at 30 years old?
Sure.
What were you doing? Did you have the really cool stuff at 30? Or are you doing all this stuff at 60 and 70? I'm like, and he's like, oh, but you'll be so much further ahead. I'm like, yeah, but also I can't buy that stuff right now. I got stuff I need to do, man. And he's so funny because he sits there every year when he comes, because he gets bored at my house sometimes. Because at his house, he has the equipment. He has little excavators, skid steers, things like that. He's like, I think you really need to buy an excavator. And I'm like, why? So you can play when you're here? So you have a toy? And he's like, well, yeah, but I mean, really, it'll be good for you too. And I'm like, yeah, sure.
He's
I'm
not
like,
wrong.
yeah, I know he's really not wrong, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm like, good Lord, to buy another thing right now, you're just like,
Uh,
please make it stop. But that was, that's what I was telling you the other night, is what I really wanted to go do after high school was drive heavy equipment, because that's what we did for fun at my house, because that was my dad's
sure.
decompress time, was heavy equipment operation.
Sure.
So it wasn't something that he had to go and talk to a lot of people or teach a lot of people or do everything like that. So that was what we did for fun. Is he would set up kind of obstacle courses of digging with the excavators,
That's
like,
pretty cool.
pick the dollar up off the ground
Sure,
without
sure.
scratching up the grass,
Yep.
and I was like, and so that's what we played with and, did things like, and
That's why you all have such good hands. So.
yeah, I would say we're always working equipment and stuff like that. But no, it's those are the fun things, and that's what I think he's so funny because he's like, well, I just feel like we could do so many things with this down here, and I'm like, yeah, I know we could, but right now we can't.
That's
So,
crazy. Yeah, that's something we share. So I grew up with heavy equipment
did
too
you
on the
really?
farm and
That's
ranch,
awesome.
and so now we have a construction company.
Oh, so cool.
And so a friend of mine, and we met through horses, and he has a carriage company, and really really cool guy. But it started out as just fun, so we
Yes.
started just like picking up equipment to use at the
See?
farming place,
Yeah.
and then it just turned into a whole other business,
Yeah,
for better or for
well,
worse.
that's what Julia and I talked about too. She's like, I could definitely see the appeal because I'll like get an excavator and rent it or something, and I throw her in it for a while, and I'm like, hey, just go in the woods and go dig
It's
something
fun.
up. Yeah, I'm like, just go do something, and she's like, I could see where that would be really addicting and whatever, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, and she's like, we could look into that and then having somebody go operate them for
Yep.
us. And I'm like, it's a slippery slope.
It
as
is. Be
you
careful.
get
I'm gonna give
into
you
it. It's
careful
like, oh,
warning.
great, another business to go run. Those are great things.
Uh,
But
Well, Michael, this has been a blast. It's
absolutely,
it's been
buddy.
a ton of fun. I've enjoyed the weekend and being able to get to know you, spend time with you. And it's really cool, man, because you the last thing you said about like training horses and looking for what you're looking for in that breeding is
Yeah,
that joy, and you exuberate that. So I definitely appreciate
yeah,
that,
absolutely.
and it's been an honor and a ton of fun spending time with you, man.
Well, anytime you guys come down North Carolina or want to just have something different to do, like come on down and
1,000%. We're
absolutely.
gonna have to do something. We'll figure it
Absolutely.
out.
I mean, you have to meet Julia. That I don't even you don't even need to come see me. I mean, just come see her. She's really the backbone of our deal. So I mean, she's actually the smart one of the group. So
And that's really really cool. I think that's super super special. Having the whole family,
yeah,
and it's just neat too, just with the Lyons legacy
yep,
and the family aspect of it. And I love hearing about, I just watch you talk about your family. You get a gleam in your eye,
yeah,
and it's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
yeah. They're good folks. So they do good. I think I finally got them trained a little bit. So
As best you could, huh?
yeah, as best I could. Yeah, I don't take responsibility for some of them, but
Thank
other
you,
than that,
Michael.
man, absolutely. Thank you, sir.
For sure.
But that was perfect.
Oh man, that was fun.